In this video, I'm going to be showing you the 4-step formula to fat loss. We're going to be going over each of the steps and how you can optimize each of those so that you can lose the most body fat while keeping the most muscle. Just before we get started, my name's Charlie. I'm a bodybuilder, BJJ fighter, level 3 personal trainer. I've over 7 years of experience in the fitness industry and have helped many clients gain muscle, build strength and lose weight. If you're interested in online coaching, just check the link in the description. So it's going to be broken up into 4 steps, as I said. The first step is going to be the calories that you consume. So this is going to come obviously when you're eating or drinking throughout the day. What you want to do is you want to have sort of a log and actually know how many calories that you're eating throughout the day. So what you can do is use like a calorie tracking app, for example, like MyFitnessPal, or any app that's going to allow you to track how many calories you're having each day. As you want to know how many calories that you're having so that you can make changes to either your diet or your exercise routine to actually allow you to lose body fat. So in order to burn body fat, you're going to need to eat less calories than you're burning. So when you're doing this, you're obviously going to be eating less, but there are going to be 2 main obstacles that are going to prevent you from doing this and actually make it quite difficult, which are going to be hunger and craving. So we're going to be going over each of those and how you can make tweaks to your diet and your routine in order to minimize their effect and actually allow you to stay consistent with your diet. So hunger is the feeling that you just want to pretty much eat more of any sort of food, but you can do steps to minimize your hunger and help you feel more satiated and full throughout the day. So first tip is going to be to try and eat more protein. So protein is actually very satiating, meaning if you were to eat like a portion of protein, it's going to be more filling as opposed to a portion of like carbs, for example. So try it where you can throughout your diet, just try and have a bit more protein in. Again, still making sure your calories are at the right amount, but try and swap some foods around, maybe have more of certain foods, less of certain foods, so that you can have more protein in throughout the day. Also, having more fiber will do pretty much the same thing. So fiber is very satiating, it'll help you stay fuller and also stay fuller for a longer amount of time. So where you can, try and make swaps in your diet or try and include foods that are quite high in fiber, as this will accomplish the same thing in keeping you more full. Also, to try and drink more water throughout the day. So sometimes when you feel hungry, it's actually your brain confusing it with thirst. So what you can do is just have a bit of water and then see how you feel after. If you still feel hungry, obviously you can have something to eat. But if it's just thirst, then obviously that will be fulfilled just by you drinking water. Also, water is going to just help you feel more full like within your stomach throughout the day. So what you could do is just like with each meal, you can have like an extra glass of water. You could like keep a water bottle with you at all times, so that if you do ever get thirsty or if you want to drink water, it's easily available. Also, you can try having things like spicy foods, as obviously if you were to eat something quite spicy, you're going to want to drink a little bit more water, and therefore you're going to be more full as a result of doing so. Also, you can have things that are going to slightly suppress your appetite and slightly reduce hunger. So things like caffeine, for example, so if you're having like a coffee, and that's going to result in you being a little bit more full after you've had it, as the caffeine is quite like an appetite suppressant. Also, something like green tea would accomplish the same sort of thing. It's going to slightly suppress your appetite after you've had it. So you may want to experiment with both of them, try and having them a bit throughout the day in order to actually help you feel fuller. Also, you want to try eating more low-calorie dense foods. So these are essentially foods that have the same amount of volume, but less calories. So examples would be something like popcorn or couscous. And these are carb sources that are very high in volume, but still fairly low in calories. So if you were to have like 100 calories worth of air pop popcorn, for example, it is going to be more filling than something like 100 grams of rice, even if they're in the same amount of calories, for example, because things like the popcorn or the couscous or most like fruits and veggies are quite high in volume. They are going to be more filling within your stomach. So try and include more of them where you can. Second category is going to be the calories that you burn throughout the day. So this is going to be broken up into 4 parts. First is going to be like your base metabolism. So if you were to just literally lay down, do nothing all day, that's the amount of calories that are going to be burned and that you're going to require just to pretty much keep your body functioning properly. Things like your brain to function, your like digestive system, your heart beating, and the calories that you just burn pretty much at baseline. Next is going to be the calories that you burn through exercise. So obviously if you were to go on like a jog, for example, and burn maybe 400 extra calories, that's going to be added on to the calories that you're burning throughout the day. Also, a thing that's quite similar is something called NEAT, which is essentially how many calories you burn through non-exercise activity. So say if you're like cooking and you're like walking around, maybe you're like stirring whatever you're cooking, you're chopping up, things like that, or things like fidgeting, or things like using your hands, for example, when you're speaking. Anything that's movement but not deliberate exercise will also count towards how many calories you're burning. And then finally, it's something called the thermic effect. So what this is, it's the amount of calories that your body burns in the process of digesting foods. Once you eat something, your body is going to actually have to digest that and actually spend quite a bit of energy doing so. So you can optimize your diet to burn the most amount of calories throughout this process. Just before we go into more detail on each of those, I'd like to make you aware of a free opportunity to massively improve your fitness progress. What it is, it's a free email campaign that's going on for 31 days. So it'll be one tip each day, but each of these tips is going to massively help you with your fitness journey. It's going to help you with things like your mindset, your training, your motivation, discipline, eating, things like this, like fat loss, willpower, goal setting, stretching, getting stronger, pretty much everything that you could even ask for. Again, that's 100% free, linked in the description, so make sure to check that out. So now we're going to go into detail in each of those 4 things. So starting off with like your base metabolism. So you can make changes to help you to increase this. One of the best ways is going to be to try and increase your muscle mass. So muscle is metabolically active, meaning the more muscle mass that you have, the more calories you're going to burn just at baseline without doing any extra like exercise, for example. So that's one of the ways that you can do that. Also, by getting enough sleep, it will help you to ensure that your metabolism is at its right level. So although any calories that you burn when you're asleep are going to be less than the calories you burn when you're awake, sleep is going to help to optimize your metabolism and prevent any sort of decrease in it. So make sure you're sleeping enough each night will help with this as well. Next, we're going to be going over the exercise. So obviously any form of exercise is going to burn calories. However, certain types of exercises are going to burn more than other types. So in general, cardio is going to burn a lot more calories than lifting weights. So if you're looking to just increase how many calories you're burning on like a weekly basis, you want to prioritize cardio. Obviously, we did mention having more muscle mass is going to help with your increasing your base metabolism. So do still include weightlifting as well, but we're going to be focusing a little bit more onto cardio for this section right here. So there are 2 main types of cardio, which are HIIT cardio and LISS cardio. So HIIT cardio is essentially where you go at like really high intensity and then you stop for a bit, maybe have a little bit of rest, and then you go again quickly for really high intensity, and then pretty much repeating that process, alternating between high intensity and low intensity. The other type is going to be LISS cardio, which is where you go at like a moderate speed or moderate intensity and you just keep that for like a prolonged period of time, maybe like 20, 30, 40 minutes. In general, for most people, I would recommend doing the LISS cardio. A few reasons. It's going to burn more calories sort of overall. Although the HIIT cardio is going to burn more calories in like a certain time frame. So if you were to do like 5 minutes, for example, very intense cardio, obviously it is going to burn more than 5 minutes of moderate intensity cardio. However, the moderate intensity will be able to be sustained over a long period of time, and therefore overall you're going to be able to do it for longer and therefore burn more calories. Also, in the LISS cardio, it's generally going to be a little bit easier, like on your joints and on your muscles. You'll be able to recover from it a little bit easier as well. So when you're doing the LISS cardio, you're obviously going to have a choice of all different cardio machines to do it on. I'm going to quickly rank all of those. So in last place is going to be any sort of arm cardio machine or any sort of bike, just because you're only really going to be using like your arms or your legs. You're not really going to be carrying your body weight throughout the exercise. Second worst is going to be the flat treadmill. So if you were to just walk normally on a treadmill, you're going to burn a decent amount of calories, but you can make it a lot better by changing it to being on an incline. So the higher the incline is, the more calories you're going to burn. So really try and prioritize increasing the incline of the treadmill. Even if the speed stays the same, you're still going to be burning more calories if you're getting that incline nice and high. Next is going to be the Stairmaster. So this is pretty much a higher version of the incline. You're going to be walking almost uphill, like up a steep flight of stairs. And therefore your body's going to be going against gravity more, and you're going to be burning more calories doing it that way. And then the best place is going to be in your cross trainer, as it's going to use like all of your legs, all of your arms, your upper body as well. It's just going to maximize how many calories you burn when you're actually doing cardio. So try and think about what one you're on at the moment, and then maybe make a change, make it a little bit more intense, or try and swap to a better version, a better cardio machine to burn more calories. Next is going to be the calories that you burn without necessarily doing exercise. So as I said, these are things like fidgeting, just moving around like throughout the day. So you can make changes to your lifestyle in order to help you burn more calories throughout the day without necessarily doing more exercise. So if you're like driving somewhere, maybe you could like park a little bit away and then walk the rest to get a few extra steps in that way. Obviously, taking things like the stairs instead of like the escalators or lifts would help you to burn more calories as well. If you're like on the phone, for example, instead of just sitting down, maybe walking around a little bit and just being more active there. And also you can try just having maybe like a coffee in the morning to give you like a little bit more energy. You're probably going to be more likely to move around a little bit. So if you do all of those things, it's going to have a significant impact on increasing how many calories you're burning. And then finally, we mentioned the calories that you burn from digesting food. So this is going to depend on the macronutrient of the food. So we're going to go over the 4 macros, and we're also going to go over a little sort of bonus tip for this as well. So starting with protein, which is going to be the highest thermic effect, it's going to be close to about 30% of the calories that you consume are going to be burned digesting it. So in theory, if you was to have 1,000 calories worth of protein, you're going to burn 300 calories just by digesting that. With carbs, it's going to be close to about like 10%. And then with fats, it's going to be pretty much 0%. It might be like 1 or 2%, but it's going to be very low compared to like the carbs or the protein. So even if you're eating the same amount of calories, if more of those calories come from protein as opposed to fats, for example, your body's going to burn more calories digesting that food, and therefore your total energy expenditure is going to be higher. And then alcohol is also technically a macronutrient. It does have a thermic effect that's fairly high, about 20%. However, in most cases, you still want to avoid alcohol as it has a lot of negative effects. It's going to negatively affect like your recovery, muscle growth, testosterone. So try not to have that if you can. And then I did mention there's going to be a bonus tip for this one. So water isn't really like a macronutrient technically. However, you can change the water that you're having to help you burn more calories by digesting that water. So when your body consumes water, it has to raise the water to the temperature of your body in order to actually digest and process that water. So if you're drinking water and it's very cold, obviously your body's going to have to burn more calories heating up that water to the temperature of your body, which is going to be about 36 degrees Celsius. So if you drink water that is 0 calories, it's going to have to raise the temperature by 36 degrees. So the actual definition of a calorie is the amount of energy that's needed to raise the temperature of 1 litre of water by 1 degree Celsius. So if you have a litre of water, if you want to raise that by 1 degree, that'll burn 1 calorie. Obviously, if you're drinking water and it's very cold, sort of around like maybe 1 or 2 degrees, it's going to require quite a bit of energy to actually do that. So each litre is going to burn 35 calories. So if you're drinking like 3 or 4 litres of water each day, obviously that's going to be like an extra 100, maybe up to 150 calories that you can burn just by drinking water when it's colder. So if you are really concerned about burning more calories, just try doing that as well. So next category is going to be sort of what happens as a result of both of those 2 previous steps. So we mentioned that you'll be consuming calories, all the tips of that. You're going to be burning calories, all the tips of that. What one is higher or lower than the other is going to depend on whether or not you're in an energy deficit or not. So if you're burning more calories than you're consuming, you are going to be in an energy deficit. If you're consuming more calories than you're burning, you're going to be in an energy surplus and your body's actually going to gain body fat. So obviously the goal in this video is about fat loss. So you want to be in an energy deficit, which means you want to be burning more calories than you're consuming each day. So we're going to go into a bit more detail about how much that change should be. Ideally, in most cases, you're going to want to limit the rate of fat loss to about 0.5% to 1% of your body weight each week. So if you're losing weight faster than that, you're probably going to want to slow it down. The only exception would be like if you're very overweight or very obese, you can lose body fat at a faster rate. However, for most people, about 0.5% to 1% per week is going to be in the right amount. So to burn 1 pound of fat per week, which is like a good goal for most people, you're going to want to stick to a calorie deficit of about 500 calories each day. So in 1 pound of fat, there's about 3,500 calories. So in order to lose that pound, if you're in a calorie deficit of 500 each day, if you times that by 7, that's going to be 3,500 calories, which is going to equate to about 1 pound of fat loss. So try and get to that amount. Again, you can make modifications to your diet, maybe eating a little bit less calories, burn a little bit more, maybe find a sweet spot of both, and try and stick to that 500 calorie deficit each day. Obviously, if you want to burn like 2 pounds of fat, it would be 1,000 calories. Half a pound, it would be 250 calories each day in the deficit. So now that you know all about the eating, the burning the calories, and as well how much the difference should be, we're going to be going over a very important thing that's not really mentioned that much, which is going to be how to optimize your lifestyle and your actual diet so that you burn the most body fat while keeping the most muscle. So if you're just in an energy deficit, you are going to lose weight. However, there's a very high chance that if you don't do it correctly, you're also going to lose muscle. So we're going to be going over a few tips to help you to keep the most muscle while losing the most body fat. So starting off with tip 1 is going to be to try and keep up your resistance training and your weightlifting even when you're cutting. So you don't want to like switch it up and start doing like low weights for high reps or doing loads of cardio or not lifting as heavy anymore. You still want to keep up the weightlifting, as that will keep the stimulus for your body to actually keep its muscle mass when you're cutting. So keep your weight train up as normal. You may lose a little bit of strength if your body weight's going down. However, just try and maintain your activity level in terms of weightlifting if you can. Second tip is going to be to keep your protein intake very high. So the more protein that you have, close to about 1 gram per pound of body weight, the more muscle you're going to keep when you're cutting. So although you can build muscle on less than 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, when you're cutting, it becomes a lot more important to stay at a high protein intake. So what you can do, a bit of what we mentioned before, like making swaps within your diet, you can try and having like more meats in your diet, maybe having like an extra protein shake, or maybe choosing different sources of foods that are higher in protein compared to others, just to try and keep your protein intake quite high. Next tip is going to be to lower your stress. So the more stressed you are, the higher the cortisol levels in your body are going to be. And the higher the cortisol levels are, they're essentially a catabolic hormone, which means it's going to be bad for muscle growth and actually maintaining muscle when you're cutting. So where you can, you want to take steps to lower your stress in order to allow you to keep the most muscle when you're actually losing weight. So a few ways you can go about keeping your stress levels quite low are going to be doing things that are relaxing, maybe something like reading, spending time in nature, doing breath work, just doing something that you find quite relaxing. Also avoiding things that are too stressful, maybe avoiding like too much social media, staying up late, going out or anything like that. Just try and stay calm and stress-free as much as you can. Also, by optimizing your sleep, it's going to help you to keep more muscle mass when you're cutting. So obviously, when you are sleeping, your body's going to be recovering from the weightlifting that you've done. It's actually going to be repairing and building up that muscle. If you're not sleeping enough, it means that your recovery isn't going to be as good, and also you're not going to be keeping as much muscle when you are cutting. So make sure your sleep is at a good level. Make sure that you're sleeping enough, getting good quality sleep, and try and stay consistent with it as well if you can. And then next tip is going to be to optimize your testosterone levels. So obviously testosterone is going to be beneficial for muscle growth as well as keeping muscle when you're cutting. So quite a few of the things we've already mentioned tie into this in terms of reducing stress, getting enough sleep, make sure you're eating right. Also make sure you're getting things like enough sunlight, making sure like you're lifting heavy, recovering properly, and just living a good lifestyle that's going to be good for testosterone is also going to be good for when you're trying to keep your muscle mass when you're cutting. So that's going to conclude the 4-step formula to fat loss. Just to conclude each of those 4 steps, first was how many calories that you're eating, second was how many calories you're burning, third is going to be what's higher or lower, and then fourth is going to be how to keep your muscle mass when you're cutting. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to subscribe and like. As I mentioned earlier on in the video, there will be links in the description to online coaching, as well as that free email campaign I mentioned earlier, so make sure to check both of them out. If you'd like to see a complete guide to discipline, just click the video and it will be here. And then I'll see you in the next video. Bye.